Welcome to For Their Thoughts podcast. I'm Betsy Hall, founding executive director of For Their Thoughts Foundation. For Their Thoughts podcast is a podcast dedicated to creating a supportive community for those affected by dementia. Our mission is to demystify the complexities of dementia and advocate for the brain health of our loved ones and ourselves. Each episode features stories and insights from caregivers, families, and professionals navigating dementia's challenges. We offer valuable information, a path to resources, and empathy-driven solutions to empower you on your caregiving journey. Whether you're a caregiver, a professional, or a family member, For Their Thoughts promotes understanding, fosters connection, and enhances the lives of those impacted by dementia. Join us as we explore this journey together and how we can all rethink dementia.
Hello and welcome to the For Their Thoughts podcast. We're here with Betsy Hall, the For Their Thoughts podcaster herself, and me, Kelly Davis. I'm president of Imagine Podcasting, where For Their Thoughts is being recorded. Guess what this is? This is episode 4, Betsy.
It is.
Betsy Hall, what do you think about that?
It's pretty exciting. I'm excited to continue diving a little bit deeper and unpacking a little bit more about how to support caregivers in the dementia community every week.
That's fantastic. And for those listeners, because this is actually a season that we're in, this is a real season for this podcast. And what I love about this podcast, we've already heard our wonderful opening, but in your own words, again, what do you hope that these podcasts are intended to do for people?
I hope that they create a conduit or a gateway to understanding and to resources. Whether you are the caregiver yourself and feeling overwhelmed and you just need little snippets of reminders and information, or if you're somebody that has a friend that has dementia and or a professional, but you haven't gotten the professional training on really how to interact with somebody with dementia. So I really hope at the end of the day, this is a conduit to understanding and a conduit to awareness and reminding people that they aren't alone in this journey.
Yes, it's so, and these kind of podcasts are so helpful and so important to people who are going through this, because it's really a whole system of things that goes into caregiving and all of that. And one of the things that you mentioned in some of your programs to give context about this particular series for our podcast, Go Apes.
Yes.
And how that kind of relates to where we are in this particular series journey.
Yes. So For Their Thoughts, we've coined a saying. We say Go Apes. And what we mean by that is Go Apes, advocate, prepare, and engage. It's a reminder that caregivers can take, and friends, families, and professionals. And in the first couple of episodes, we really covered the A of the apes, advocacy. And we touched a bit on the E, engagement. We did it from two different angles. We had Dawn, and her episode, A Mother's Fight, was talking from the angle of a mother who was taking care of her daughter, who was only in her late 20s, early 30s with frontotemporal dementia. And that fight she needed to do, that advocacy she needed to advocate to get a correct diagnosis for her daughter, because it's not part of aging when you're only 30 years old. And she had to really, really go from doctor to doctor till she got that correct diagnosis. And then to continue to care for her daughter, she had to engage in the right communities. And then the next week we talked to Arnie and we got his perspective as someone who's caring for his wife with Alzheimer's, the more common type of dementia. And the same thing, he had to not settle for the diagnosis of dementia, because dementia is not a diagnosis. It's a symptom. Alzheimer's is the diagnosis. And so we talked about the advocacy that he had for his wife and finding the right community for him as a male caregiver caring for his wife. So we covered the A, we covered the E, but what about that P that's in the middle? Prepare.
Prepare. Oh, yeah.
So today I want to jump back to FTD, but FTD with a twist, and invite a good friend of mine, Elin, onto the podcast to talk through her lived experience of what FTD meant for her, who she is in the FTD world, and how she prepared herself, and what advice she has for preparing and really creating that construct of an environment that creates safety for our loved ones and creates sanity for ourselves, and so that everybody involved can focus on quality time, quality care, quality of life.
So before we bring Elin into our studio, which will be momentarily here, and especially that P in Go APE, would you, off of the top of your head, before we hear from Elin, what's one of the things in your experience about preparing? I mean, do you feel like, can you ultimately just prepare yourself, or these are just kind of helpful hints? When you hear prepare for this kind of thing, what kind of stands out for you in your experience?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and this is probably my engineering brain talking, is knowledge is power. If you don't understand something, it feels much more overwhelming, and it's going to feel like a fire hose at the beginning. But the more you can understand, the easier it will be, and that fire hose will start to kind of turn down a little bit of the pressure. And it's just like when you start anything new feels a little overwhelming at the beginning. So for me, knowledge is power, and that's for the first place to start. And it jumps into the engage, but know that you can't do this alone.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do this alone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that said, you think we're ready to welcome Elin Adcock into our studio? Okay. So as we gather here, I think Elin is here. Hold on. We need to make sure. Elin, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Well, welcome, Elin Adcock, to our For Their Thoughts podcast with Betsy Hall. I am Kelly Davis. We met briefly before we jumped in it here. So right now, I think you have heard Betsy talk about Go APE. And you are the P in APE here of preparing. So, Betsy, I think we just want to hear a little bit of her story. Do you want to prep us in, introduce Elin to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, Elin, we met, what was it, 3 years ago, I think, around then?
We did meet 3 years ago, although I have known of you for several years. Due to some great word of mouth advertising for Their Thoughts.
You may or may not be speaking of the Redwoods.
I may be speaking of the Redwoods, and one Redwood in particular.
Yes, exactly. So, I'll let you tell, it's your story. So I'll let you tell this story. Is I met you in the unfortunate after the passing of Larry.
Right.
But yeah, well, let's start there of kind of where you're calling in from, and who you are in the FTD world.
Sure. So I live in the Panhandle of Florida, in Navarre, Florida, which is a tiny little town right in between Pensacola and Destin, which would be two destination locations that people would be familiar with. My husband, Larry, was 56 when he was diagnosed with FTD. He and I moved here to the Panhandle of Florida in 2016 to be closer to our parents. His parents lived here near us and were needing some assistance. And we moved from Texas and left behind our entire support network, our friends, our family, our church, our children. Two of my children, one was young enough to move with us, but the two older children stayed behind, and completely upended our lives to move here. And there was an awful lot of loss in the couple of years after we came here. Not only did we leave behind our entire support network, but my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer very shortly after we moved here. We lost her that year. Then we lost Larry's mother then we lost my brother-in-law, then we lost my father. And so there was loss after loss after loss until finally COVID hit. And then we lost our freedom and then our ability to move around in the world. And I think it was at that time that I really began to see the first symptoms in Larry that were just confusing. They were very, innocuous. There were slight lapses in understanding of what was happening or what was said, or I remember getting a letter in the mail from the state troopers, one of those donation letters, and he pulled it out of the mailbox and he started reading it and he said, "Oh, they want me to be a state trooper." And I just said, "No, it's a donation letter," and just kind of laughed it off and didn't think anything of it. And it wasn't really until, I guess, the first of maybe March in 2021 that we had our first crisis in the household where we had a disagreement and a misunderstanding. And I became very angry with him because this was not the man I married. He was not insensitive. He was, he always put people first. Never wanted to make anyone feel bad about themselves. Just very, very kind and loving, and wouldn't tell you that you didn't look right. Wouldn't say you need to go change that before you leave. He's that kind of person. He's going to lie to you. He's not going to tell you exactly what he's thinking. He's going to tell you what you need to hear in that moment to make yourself feel good about yourself. But in the spring of 2021, we had some incidents that were not like that. And he was incredibly insensitive. And I just became very angry and frustrated with him. He had always been a very handy person around the house. He and I would work on projects together and we would resolve these projects and have these amazing things that happen. And that just wasn't happening anymore. He stopped really conversing with us. He would come home at lunch and he would fall asleep on the couch. And then a couple minutes before, wake up and go back to work and not even really say anything. And then come home at dinner time, same thing, not really talking to us, which again was very unlike him. So it was a really confusing time and I had absolutely no idea what was going on until the day he came home and told me he had been fired from his job because he was telling his boss he was starting a new job. He was going to be training to be a bus driver with the county. He had been a bus driver in the past, but he was so tired from his previous job and just wearing himself thin that we thought, let's just go get you a nice little bus driver job and you can build up your strength again. And let's see how that goes. Came home one morning and said, well, I've been fired. And the reason he had been fired is he told his boss that he was going to pack a box cutter and brass knuckles and a screwdriver in his backpack on the bus every day to protect himself in case the kids attacked him.
Oh.
And at that moment it was, this is brain disease. You have something wrong with your brain. This is not just, and it was like the aperture of a lens just zooming in on his face. I literally had that visual and that instant understanding that there is something really wrong with my husband. I did not know what it was. I prayed for a brain tumor, but it was not to be. It turned out to be FTD. Our journey to diagnosis was probably not as long as many. Although we live in the panhandle of Florida and we are not near a center of excellence, I had a physician's assistant that was our primary care provider who instantly recognized that there was something really wrong with Larry. Her words were, it's either a psychotic break or a brain tumor or some sort of organic process going on that is causing this. And she did everything she could to get us the appointments that we needed to seek the diagnosis. And we only had one near miss. We went to a neurologist down in Tampa who at first was, diagnosing him with MCI and wanted to send him home with Aricept. But in the vein of knowledge is power, I had spent a couple of months between there's something wrong with your brain and that appointment in trying to inform myself about what it could possibly be, and, Googled the symptoms and found the association of frontotemporal dementia and started watching webinars and recognizing Larry's symptoms in the things that they were presenting. And so I pretty much quickly came to the self-diagnosis of, this is frontotemporal dementia. This is dementia that I'm looking at. And I'd not had any exposure to that. I'd not had any family members with dementia. I'd not been prepared for this at all. And so I had the same reaction that most do when we were given the diagnosis of, now what? Our neuropsychologist who diagnosed him was very kind. I've heard some horror stories of, this is what you've got. Now you just have to go home and take care of your affairs and blah, 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 blah.
That was our story. Yep, yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah. This doctor was very kind and booked an hour with Larry and I to sit down and explain that, yes, this was FTD and this is what the diagnosis means. And knowing full well that Larry had anosognosia, which is, of course, no understanding that he was sick at all, because he had spent so much time with him, evaluating him, couched his words in such a way that I would understand what he was saying, but that Larry would not understand fully what he was saying and would not become upset or angered or anything by the diagnosis. And he dealt with Larry on his level when Larry asked a few questions. Larry's focus was, I need to get a job. And his answer was, well, maybe you can take a break from that. Why don't we just wait and see what's actually going on before you try to take another job? I just was so caring and so kind. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had. Of course, I was devastated, but just that he had taken that care with us was so touching to me.
Yeah.
And I hear that. I hear that in your voice, that it is. And kudos to you having a person like that can help you navigate these waters. And, when we were talking about Go APE and the preparedness, and you said how you prepared is by doing some research, like you knew something, something murky was happening, but really the fact that you went out to do research on that is your compliment, because you just simply knew that something was off.
Yeah. I mean, as Ellen, you know this, Sharon Hall says, when your loved one isn't who they were, consider neurological before psychological.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you just described. You said, there's something wrong with his brain. He's not who he used to be. And I remember feeling, my mom was 56, so the same age. And I absolutely remember all of us thinking, we don't know if this is a stroke. We don't know if this is a brain tumor. We thought brain tumor too, and you're echoing my thoughts. I remember thinking, God, I hope this is a brain tumor, because we can fix a brain tumor.
Isn't that something? Right. Yeah.
That is exactly what my thought process was. I cannot fix dementia, but we could potentially fix a brain tumor.
Yep. Yeah. And when you read the descriptions of FTD and then you look at your loved one, denial is done because you see it. So I thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
And thank you for being so vulnerable and open with that.
Yes.
And I want to take that moment and kind of transition, just a pivot to what next? What did you do to help prepare yourself, and what advice would you have? Because now your world's been flipped upside down and you're in Florida, not in Texas anymore. And so what advice would you give to prepare for the next steps?
Well, of course, the first advice that you get from your doctor is go get your affairs in order. And so the first stop for us was an elder law attorney. And the only reason I knew to go to an elder law attorney at that point was because prior to our diagnosis, I became very dialed in with a group of, we call them the Redwoods. And I'll explain the theory of the Redwoods in a minute, but caregivers, FTD caregivers who are experienced, who knew what FTD looked like and knew what challenges I would be facing. And they're a very solutions-oriented group. It's not just a place to go and, oh my goodness, I thought I had unplugged that.
That's okay. That's okay. This is the fun about podcasting. We get all the nuances.
I muted it, but I didn't unplug it. I should have unplugged it. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem, Elin. Please
I'll back up.
continue. Yeah.
So the group that I joined is an FTD chat. It's I found them on Facebook. There are a number of Facebook groups, the FTD spouse, frontotemporal dementia 101. There's 3 or 4 of them that I found, and this chat was advertised, and it's a twice weekly chat. We meet Saturdays and Mondays, led by the famous Sharon Hall, as we have mentioned. And in that group, those ladies kind of fast-tracked me to the first things that I needed to take care of. And the first was go see an elder law attorney who can help you devise a plan, a financial plan for your future. Nobody knows what will come of their FTD diagnosis, how fast it will be, how short it will be. But an elder law attorney who's in your state can help you prepare for the eventuality of placement and or protecting your assets. So we did that first, rearranged our wills and got everything taken care of, which was a huge burden off my shoulders. That weight lifted as soon as we got that done. And the second thing was to try to determine what my care plan was going to look like. I was working from the home. I'm fortunate enough to work remotely. I didn't have to go into an office every single day. And I was able to keep Larry at home throughout his through the entire journey, which was a blessing, because there are not, where we live, any care facilities close to our house. If I'd had to place them, I wouldn't have been able to see him as often as I would have liked. It would have been an 1.5-hour drive one way to go see him. So I was fortunate to be able to keep him at home. And I was also fortunate that a couple of years prior, we had signed up for a long-term care policy that allowed me to get help in the home 3 days a week to help me care for him. There's absolutely no way I could have done the 24/7 by myself. As we know with FTD, you get a variety of symptoms. Some people are agitated. Some people are very apathetic. Some people are go, 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 go. Well, Larry wanted to go. He had a routine and he wanted to stick to that routine. He wanted to go to McDonald's and he wanted to go to Walmart and pick out some Hot Wheels cars. And then he wanted to go buy some more brass knuckles because he became very fascinated with self-protection. He thought people were out to get him and he wanted to make sure he could protect himself and protect his family. And so he frequently wanted to buy brass knuckles and hand them out to friends like party favors. He did a lot of that. Our pastor in Texas recorded something for his funeral, and he tells the story of Larry coming back to Texas to visit him and giving him these brass knuckles. He said, I've never been given a gift like this. And he says, I'm not going to show them around very often, but I certainly will treasure them because I know that he gave them to me because he wanted me to be safe. And that was Larry. He cared about, always put other people ahead of him and cared very much about other people. So that quality remained to the end. So very proud of that. Very proud of him and his strength through this journey. So go ahead.
I want to take a couple more minutes on this topic. And so you prepared, absolutely, elder law, seeing somebody, like you said, getting that burden off, because you don't want to have to worry about that when, excuse my language, shit hits the fan.
Right.
So, and then putting that care plan together, at this point, you had met the Redwoods, you had engaged in the care chat. And so now you had another preparation of having that support system for you, because every day was going to be different. And because you can't know everything that's going to come. So what other advice? Do you have any other suggestions on ways that you prepared? Were there any special things that you needed to do around the house?
Absolutely. So my first thought was, we have to make sure that he is safe, because he was a go, go, go guy. And I wanted to give him autonomy. I kind of think of it as bumper ball. When you're first teaching your child to bowl, you put up bumpers in the gutters so that ball just kind of goes between the bumpers and finally makes its way down the alley. And I took the same.
Go ahead.
So I took a similar approach at home, where I wanted him to have autonomy. I wanted him to feel as though he had control over his own life. But there were things that I controlled, like what input is he going to have into his brain that is going to keep him calm. He was never much of a news watcher, but had he been a news watcher, I would have made sure that the news was off. We didn't turn on the television with loud movies or dramas or thrillers or loud music, because those kind of things irritated him, and I wanted him to feel peaceful. He liked cartoons, so we would put cartoons on and turn them way down. Another favorite thing of his was to, scroll through his phone. He liked to look for pictures of cars. And unfortunately, as we know, if our people are online, sometimes they can see or come up against some unsavory things that they shouldn't be watching. And so when Larry was asleep or in a shower or what have you, somewhere where he didn't know what I was doing, I took control of his phone. I logged in and deleted all those things he didn't need to be seeing, and added kitten videos and travel pictures and warm fuzzy stuff, and got rid of the swipe up to see this person, all this stuff. So
you gave them that independence and that happy and that feeling of independence.
That's right.
But in a safe environment.
That's right. I did the same thing with his credit card. I wanted him to have his debit card, but I put limits on his debit card so that he only could spend X amount of dollars in a store, X amount of dollars online, X amount of dollars if he made his way to an ATM, so that he could not drain his bank account.
Great idea.
Yeah. And locking down our credit, so that, because some FTD patients have the wherewithal to go and apply for a new credit card if you take their credit card.
Yeah.
So we did all of those things, and those were all by suggestion of this FTD care chat. These are all people who have been through it and suffered and don't want anybody else to suffer. So again, very solutions based and very pragmatic and matter of fact about, if you do not do this, X, Y, and Z could happen. Mm-hmm. And I listened.
And before, I know we're getting close to our time here, but before we leave this preparedness area, what we talk about preparedness, because you have a loved one that's going through some neurological stuff. They're going through some form of dementia, and how to prepare for that. Elin, I have to ask you, how do you prepare for your self-care when you were going through it, and even now as you are on the other side of it? I just like to also maybe speak a little bit about how you can prepare to give yourself a little time, or I guess the question is, Elin, did you?
Yeah, that is the hardest thing to do when you're caring for somebody 24/7, is give yourself that time. But I bought a set of headphones, and I wore those headphones around the house all day, every day. And I listened to podcasts, and I listened to audiobooks, and I listened to webinars. And I participated in that FTD chat. Almost every waking day, moment that I wasn't working, I was listening to something or reading something or learning somewhere. The twice weekly chat was like respite for me, because those were my people. Those were people who understood what I was going through. Those were people who supported me in what I was going through. And our journey was very fast, because Larry was diagnosed with ALS as well. A few months after the FTD diagnosis, I saw other symptoms, and turns out he also had ALS on top of the FTD. And we didn't have the plateau stair step situation. We just had a
downward
pretty rapid decline. And as I was seeing symptoms and describing to them, they were able to tell me, do this, do that, do this, and supported me every step of the way. Had it not been for that group, as you mentioned early on, Betsy, you can't do this by yourself, and you shouldn't do this by yourself. But as women in particular, we feel like it is our job to be the caregiver and make the decisions and do the work for our family. In a dementia diagnosis, journey, it's physically impossible to do by yourself.
So with that, one of sort of some of our closing out questions, what advice would you give then, after all that you have said in this particular episode here? What advice would you give to someone new to caregiving?
Well, that's a big question. Definitely get connected with a support group of people who are successful. I wouldn't say just go online and find a group of people and listen on Facebook, because there's some crazy groups out there, and some people that really don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And there's some trial and error in it. There's some angry advice out there. There's some wrong advice. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A group with people that get it and that have successfully gone through some of these hardships.
Correct.
Yeah. And piggybacking on that, what advice, we always like to ask, would you give to the once removed? And when I say once removed, I'm talking about, the kids that live remote.
Yeah.
Or the Larry's friends that aren't maybe coming around because they don't get what's going on. Larry's personality has changed. It sounds like he had the behavioral FTD.
He did.
Old work buddies, that kind of thing.
What advice would you give to everybody on the peripheral, that if it was a cancer diagnosis, you'd have 15 casseroles on your front porch, but because of dementia, you're getting desertion?
We get crickets instead of casseroles. Absolutely. I don't know if it's advice so much as an admonishment. There's a lot of fear involved with a diagnosis like this. People are afraid of failing. They're afraid of seeing what the disease is doing to the person that they care so much about. You get a lot of thoughts and prayers, and you get a lot of, well, let me know what I can do to help. Unfortunately, that places the burden back on the caregiver.
Yeah.
Right? To decide what it is that you can do for that person. And they've already got so much on their plate trying to figure out how to care for their person. They don't have time to tell you how to care for them.
Yeah.
So be specific.
That's
just show up.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. Just look around. If my floor is dirty, show up and sweep my floor. If you know that I'm having a hard time with him because I've told you I'm having a hard time with him, show up with dinner.
Yeah.
Right? And I may not be able to go out with you for dinner because we are locked in at this particular moment, but you can come over and you can sit with me and eat dinner with me and wash the dishes for me while I get him in bed. And then we can sit and talk for a couple minutes. Just That and the other advice that I gave to my friends that were maybe remote. They were in Texas. They were not here. They were out living their lives. They were out socializing with our group of friends. And I asked them, please share pictures of where you're going. Send us videos. Let us know that you're thinking about us as if we were there, right? As if next week I'm going to be there. It's not like we're never going to be there again. Just like pretend like next week I'm going to be there and I just couldn't be there this time.
Yeah.
And they did that. They showed up for us and sent us notes and sent us pictures and sent us, live feeds from their cruises and whatnot. And that was a godsend to us because it was
show up
and right there as people are sharing memories with you and your spouse. How would you have wanted it was Larry, your husband? How do you want him to be remembered?
By those friends?
Just in general, like just being remembered, like how, you went through an ordeal towards the end of his life, but how would you wish people to remember him?
Absolutely. He was dynamic. And when I say he put people first in all things, he did. If he walked into a room, and it was a party, it didn't have to be his party, it could be anybody's party. He would make sure that every single person in that room felt seen, felt like they were a part of the group, had a drink in their hand, knew where everything was, and just tried to put people at ease and show them how they were cared for. I don't think a single one of his friends don't remember him that way. In fact, we still meet and we still talk. And we talk about him like he's in the present because he is still very much in the present for all of us.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Elin. And I know this is hard, but we're in the last 30 seconds. I want to ask the final question of if you could name one tangible resource.
Yep. I've got 3 or 4.
What's that? What are those? Yes.
So the books that I read, and the first one was Loving Someone with Dementia by Pauline Boss. That one really hit home with me. It was difficult to read at first. The second was Travelers to Unimaginable Lands by Dasha Kuiper. And then this is going to sound kooky. I'm not, a kooky person. The podcast Cannabis Helps Dementia with Dave and Sheila Conan was invaluable. Had it not been for that resource and for their advice on how they managed their mother's journey, I probably would not have had as smooth a journey with Larry, or quite frankly, for myself, without that as well. So those are 3.
Thank you.
Well,
wonderful.
Thank you, Elin, for being here. Thank you for sharing with us, Larry, and your journey, and putting the P in Go Apes.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And if people want to see this beautiful podcast, if they're not currently watching it, they want to share, be sure to check us out
we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, basically anywhere, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you get your podcast, you can find us.
Thanks again, Elin. And this is wonderful, Betsy.
Yep. Thank you.
Have you or someone you know been impacted by a form of dementia? Have you felt the weight of this diagnosis? Let us be your compass, whether you are a care professional, family member, or friend. For Their Thoughts podcast will shed light on resources, real-life stories, and care strategies to empower you to be the change agent, step in, and make a difference in the life of your loved ones or patient with dementia. To learn more, head over to the For Their Thoughts website at www.fortheirthoughts.org. Subscribe now for the For Their Thoughts podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen.